Good evening and welcome to the Ogden City Council meeting of August 22nd, 2017. Please note this is the 6 p.m. City Council meeting, and also that all council members are present at this time. With that, I'll turn the time over to Vice Chair Heyer for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, thank you, Chair White. We've asked our CAO, Mark Johnson, if he would lead us in the pledge today.
Please stand and face the flag and join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. Excuse me. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. The first one is the joint work session of January 3rd, 2017. Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair White. I have reviewed those minutes and found them to be accurate.
The regular meeting of January 24th, 2017. Vice Chair Heyer.
Yes, Chair, they appear to be correct.
The special meeting of May 9th, 2017. Councilmember Garner.
Yes, Chair White, I've reviewed those minutes and found them to be correct.
The regular meeting of May 16th, 2017. Councilmember Lopez.
Minutes are accurate, Chair White.
The regular meeting of May 23rd, 2017. Councilmember Nadolski.
Minutes are accurate to my recollection.
And the joint work session of June 6th, 2017. Councilmember Stevens.
Yes, Chair, they're correct, and I make a motion that we approve the minutes that have been presented tonight.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Stevens, second by Councilmember Lopez. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilmember Lopez, was it a 16-pager this time?
No.
Okay, just checking. Next on our agenda is the public hearings for the fiscal year 2018 budget amendment and ordinance amendments for the Union Station.
Chair, item A will be covered by Lisa Stout, and item B will be covered by Tom.
Thank you, Council Chair. Council members, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. The budget opening before you is to specifically address operating expenses at Union Station for the city to assume those operations. We have reviewed prior budgets when the city operated Union Station in 2004, and we have looked at the current operating expenses and revenues from the foundation this year and have come up with a preliminary recommendation. We also propose that we come back to the council with to amend the staffing document and further true up the budget to what it should be. But the action before you today is a total appropriation in the general fund of $567,000. This includes some revenues from operations at the Union Station itself, including the rooms they rent out of $150,000. Some lease revenues, these are current operating leases, or tenants that are currently in the building of $27,000. And admissions to the museum revenue of $40,000. We are also proposing an appropriation of general fund balance in the amount of $350,000 this year to help fund operations. The fund balance for the general fund currently has sufficient balance to make this appropriation and still meet the state requirement of 5% fund balance. And these will be appropriated to wages, to part-time wages, to office supplies, building and gallery supplies, utilities, contracted services, insurance costs, And this, with a significant portion going to building repairs and maintenance. There's some immediate needs down there, I understand. Do you have any questions regarding this budget opening?
What about the $54,000 for utilities? Is that taken out?
Oh, yes, so that is taking the budget that the city has had the last couple of years of $50,000 and appropriating it into the Union Station budget. The $54,000 was under non-departmental. We are putting this budget under community and economic development in accordance with the next administration that they will be responsible for operations.
Okay.
And are these estimates or are these?
Yes, right now, based on prior experience with Union Station and the current operating revenue and expenses, the foundation appears to be the trending. The reality is the city will probably have to subsidize Union Station between $300,000 and $500,000 a year.
These funds are not for a full year either. And I don't think that microphone's working, Lisa.
Did you say these funds are what? Are not for a full year?
Yeah, we won't be assuming till October 1. No, October 1, September 1. So that won't be a full fiscal year.
Oh.
That these funds will be going towards. It'll just simply be September 1 through June 30th, 10 months.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you say there was a part B?
That's Tom,
The manager.
Oh, there, I'm sorry, I've got it down there.
and he dressed up especially for this.
You said if the mic doesn't work, he's not speaking.
That better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Chair, Commissioners, I'm going to talk a little bit about the current plan framework for going forward with Union Station. We will begin as we finish negotiations with the foundation, which are currently underway. This is the current plan, and it's subject to some change as we go through final work with the foundation and determining what things will be going on. But this is the general framework going forward. Bob Geyer will begin full-time management, we hope, on the first week of September. That'll be the week that he comes in under Community and Economic Development and will begin. During the interim, we have begun evaluation of the structure and looking at the immediate maintenance and cleanup areas of the primary public exposed areas, those areas that are most trafficked, and trying to find out what the budget will be to get those cleaned up. And we're focusing on bathrooms and other, community and public areas at this particular time. Once that budget has been worked on, we'll work within the existing preliminary budget that Lisa gave you and try to guide that through. We'll kind of do a triage as to what things we think are most important. We'll come back to you with that particular list. Now it looks like those primary things are bathrooms and main hall spaces and some doors and windows, and we also have some pieces of the building that have fallen off that need to be restored. We'll do those. There's also an electrical issue that we'll be looking at, some safety things in the building to make sure that it's done. We've started the general business plan, which is focused on enhancing the existing revenue sites, but also bringing in new revenues. We brought together a number of members of the community to help us look at new events or additional enhancements to existing events to increase revenues, or not just to increase the revenues, but to increase the activity level at at Union Station. We are kind of in the process of assessing potential partners that will head various events and do various things. Brandon and I are working on the acquisition issues. Brandon's taking the lead on working with Union Pacific and negotiating that property purchase, and we've had those conversations. We still have a bit of a gap between the ask and our willingness to pay, and we'll keep you up to speed as that goes along. Our goal is to try to get that completed within the next 90 days. We will be using the existing employees for the next 90 to 120 days. We'll be going through an evaluation system, and we'll basically determine whether they're in the right place, and if they are the right personnel. Those that we think meet both of those criteria will be asked to stay, and then we may enhance those depending on what we have in our budget and what we decide that needs first work. So it's still fairly foggy as we're going through trying to evaluate it. The building's massive. We did a walkthrough. I've done 2 walkthroughs, and I think I've lost about 5 pounds in the walkthroughs because the building is mammoth. And there is, it's, I think, as was just described to me, it's a very precious building that has a lot of value to it, and we've just got to figure out the solution to the problem. And I can't represent to you today that we have the full solution. We're going to do really small baby steps and try to get looking at first things first, cleaning it up and kind of adding some things to it, getting people there to get more familiar with some of the things. We're building off what we think was a really good foundation over the last 2 years in revenue enhancements that were done. So those things are really good. We want to continue to move forward with those and to make sure that we do that, but we think there's some things that we can do. We have a list of about 22 things that we'll narrow down and see if we can find community sponsorship to carry out. We've got our event staff. We've got the Ogden Downtown Alliance also working on it, and then we'll bring in other partners. With that, you probably have more questions than I have answers, but I'm more than willing to.
So, Tom, with that, we've had input about the importance of the balance between the economic development at the Union Station and some of the historical preservation work that goes on there and the museum. And
I don't see a difference. I think in the historical maintenance of that particular building is economic development. I don't see the difference.
Well, and also the grounds and the trains and
all those things. All of those things factor into it, and that's partly what we're looking at is how do we enhance those particular assets? We have some fairly large assets that are there. The gun collection has an unestimable value. I don't even have a clue what it's worth, but it's worth a lot. The car collection, not to mention the train collection. We've got to figure out how to maximize those assets. So that's economic development, and those things are the parts that we'll work on.
So the question I have is, we're taking this from recreation and parks and moving it into economic development. Is there a purpose for maybe bringing it into your department than to leave it in rec and parks?
We're doing a lot more than just maintaining a building. We're basically developing a business plan around one primary set of assets, which are the museum pieces and the building. But there's a lot more that has to happen on the site. The current plan that we actually did, I think it was 3 years ago now, Brandon, contemplates the development of the site, having a lot more buildings on it and having other things that bring traffic into the area. It contemplates trying to look at bringing the intermodal hub back into that center of that particular area. So those are the things that we're working on, is trying to liven up the space, make it a center of economic development activity. And so it takes more integration than just the maintenance of a building to do that, and that's why we were charged with it.
So we have an opportunity to maybe introduce new tenants into the building and
we're already
aspect.
working on new tenants, but there's a difference between interim tenants and long-term tenants. Our goal is to enhance the value of the property so that we can go from what I would consider sea level and D-level tenants to A-level tenants. And so the issue is to create the desire for tenants to want to be in this space. And right now, that's something that is going to require a significant overhaul and remodeling of the building and the site, which was part of the discussion, enhancement of the other museum assets. There are far more assets down there than I realized, and Charlie can probably give you actually a far better detailed list.
Just take a tour in the basement and you'll be like, wow.
So there's a lot down there that we have to work with, and so our goal and what we've done over the years is we figured out how to maximize values of community assets. That's what we're charged with. That's economic development, kind of in a simple stated.
Is there a timeline for the plan?
I will get you a timeline. I hope it's before I die. Or I may die from trying to get a timeline. I'm not sure how that'll work.
Tom, what is your strategy to continue to utilize the people who are volunteering that are passionate and engaged?
Well, we need to assess. There's definitely passionate, but whether they fit in with what we're trying to do, I don't know yet. So we're not trying to. We'll go through this, 90-day to 6-month period, and hopefully, my general sense is that from what we've met, everything, they all have a role to play. We may redefine the role to some degree. We'll try to incorporate everybody that's down there that we possibly can, but I'm not going to tell you that we may not have to let somebody go and bring in other talents. So, but I have no preconceived notions of who that is or what it is at the moment. That's one of the reasons we brought Bob down, is to help us. He's got a myriad of experience. He's been there for many, many years. So
there's a lot of volunteers who spend a number of time and effort down there. And do you see an opportunity for them to go forward in this program?
I don't see it. We would like to actually increase the level of volunteerism, but that was one of the charges that we went through yesterday, is how do we increase the level of volunteerism, because there's levels of increased participation that we need to find out who in the community, besides the ones that we currently have, that are interested in helping preserve and move the project forward. And there are other areas. They don't have to be just interested in the museum. They may be interested in other aspects of the development. If we can find somebody that loves a laundry building, we could use some help there. So,
Tom, I have a question. Have you done any fact-finding trips to other union stations in other cities?
Well, we've been in Denver, which is one, and we've got a number of other ones that we haven't actually visited, but we've kind of done our Google look at and pulled some information down on, and so we have what we think is a really good model in Denver, because Denver, which should be a larger scale project than we'd undertake, but is still very similar in nature to what we do, is incorporating the transportation hub, incorporating the street frontages on both sides of what their wall is, because they have the same particular issue, using large people gathering spaces and creating a community gathering space at Union Station where people come. We started there early in the morning, and you just watch the population gather. And the population comes there for lunch. They come there to sit and talk. There's a hotel that's also included in that space. It also has an intermodal hub, as well as what'll be different there is they also have an Amtrak location, which we obviously wouldn't have. So we'll take the things that we notice that we think are very contributing to the improvement of that area, and there were a lot of really good things in those models, but there are other ones in Sacramento. Los Angeles is different, but it has some things that we've been looking at. So we've looked around the country. We'll spend a lot more time evaluating those for various approaches to how those other stations have been developed. I was given a number, I forget how many union stations there are, but there are a number of them around the country that have been improved or in various size communities. Yeah, ours is a fairly good size station, so.
Other questions? Any others? Okay. Great. So more to come before you die. That's what I wrote down. But
Not going to die because he's going to lose 5 pounds looking at all those other, each station is 5 pounds. You got a lot of stations out there.
Keep walking around that place, I'm going to get a signal.
that's a possibility. All right, this is a public hearing. So anybody that would like to come up, you have 3 minutes to discuss anything about the Union Station. We don't get very many people coming up with their bike helmets. I love that.
My name is Christopher Buchel. I was here 2 weeks ago to talk a little bit about trains. I'm here again to talk about trains. One, I just wanted to comment that Portland, Oregon has a couple operating steam and diesel locomotives under the Park and Rec Bureau. They have property that they maintain for just for the preservation of trains. They don't focus on the hotel. They don't. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay.
If you just hold it a little closer, that would be good.
Okay, there you go. So they focus primarily on the trains and the rail preservation. So that's under the Park and Recreation Bureau, and I just want you to share that. Denver is a great station, but they don't have any railroad equipment on display for preservation. Ogden has more than one, so there's a little bit of a difference with Denver. I'm excited that the city is moving forward with the interest on Union Station. It's a great asset. It needs to move forward. If I were to make a suggestion, it's important that whatever the city does, placing whoever in charge in our station or contract with the foundation to make meetings public. You talk about trying to encourage volunteers to be involved, and it's not making it very inviting when you kick volunteers out of board meetings. And that's what Union Station Foundation did. It is important to include community members and volunteers in board meetings when they're working on the very thing that you care for. The locomotives need ongoing care and maintenance. Again, maybe they should be transferred to state ownership, Utah State Rail Museum Authority, so the city can focus on the station and not worry about train equipment that other cities are not contributing to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The handheld.
Hi there. Charles Trentelman. I'm the Secretary of the Union Station Foundation. I've been a volunteer at Union Station for 4 years. I think this is going to be a very complex deal. I kind of share Tom Christopoulos's fear of dealing with all of this stuff because it's going to be, I know it's going to be messy and some feelings are going to get hurt somewhere along the line. They always are. But Union Station is owned by Ogden City, and the foundation is very glad to be working with Ogden City again and seeing Ogden City stepping up and taking care of its property in a more active manner. The foundation really feels very strongly that its primary goal should be fundraising and program development. Those have been the bright spots in the 4 years I've been working down there, and I really hope we're going to be able to continue doing that. At the same time, we support Tom working on the things he's going to be doing. As far as whether this is a good investment for the city, it is. As you probably know, I'd be happy to supply you with data, historic preservation renovation, it pays back a lot better than any kind of new construction development does. More jobs, less waste produced, it's more environmental, and it's better for the economy, not to mention preserving what I consider to be the heart of my city. And so I appreciate you looking at this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Lewis, the president of the foundation at Union Station, and would be remiss if I didn't stand up and throw in with what has been said by Tom and Charlie as far as the Union Station being such a gem and a jewel and very much a precious thing. I was talking to Tom about how big this project is and how ungainly it looks and how we are in the middle of something that none of us really understand, but it is so precious and so invaluable what you're doing, and to be able to feel like we've taken it to this point where you're all looking at something just big and magnificent and a legacy project for Ogden is very exciting for me. And with all the fear of what it is and how it's all going to turn out, and that we don't know what it is right now, it's been very exciting to work with Ogden at this point and to have it an economic development project where we feel like Ogden is finally seeing it as an asset and not a liability. And we're, as the foundation, very excited to work with Ogden City and with Tom and seeing kind of all sorts of, magnificent options happening. So thank you for looking this again and supporting it, and kind of want to make sure that I assure you that as the foundation, we will make sure that we support it with our professional expertise in raising the monies and making sure that the historic value remains, impeccable. And like Ogden High did with their foundation and district cooperation, that we can very much work in concert for that, including the volunteers being very much supported. And the foundation is not going to fade away and let the city take the hit for all of this. We are continuing to support our volunteers and our people and use them. So I think we can both work in concert for that particular end. So thank you very much, and it's an exciting project. I'm glad we're on our way.
Thanks, Julie. Anyone else? Okay.
Chair, seeing no movement, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer and second by Councilmember Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Public hearing is closed.
Chair White, I make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2017-35.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lopez, second by Councilmember Garner to adopt the proposed ordinance 2017-35. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
Aye, that passes. Yay, go on. That's the first one. We need to...
Chair White, I would make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2017-39.
I second it.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2017-39. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
Aye, that passes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, this is fantastic, and I think it's a... thank you for all the work that you've already done, and it looks like you're going to be doing a little bit more work, so don't think this is all off of your shoulders just quite yet. So we appreciate it. Yeah.
I think the Union Station is so important to us as a community. when I grew up, that was a bustling station down there, and I recall going underneath the tunnel and up on the other side and catching the train and went with my mother to Rock Springs to establish a store there. But every time you look at 25th Street, the caption is Union Station. And so it's necessary for us to find ways to not only preserve the Union Station, but also to catch the value of Union Station and to bring life back into it. And I think with the Ogden City going through and doing the maintenance and making sure the grounds are and what needs to be done, and the foundation working to work in the revenue or the fundraisings and bringing different projects on, it can be a great cooperation between both of them. But we have to do it as a community to preserve that gem that we have here, and I think it is a real gem.
Councilmember Stevens, you're dating yourself, just so you know.
I'm only
and bustling. And I'm also pleased, and Christopher, I think your comments are well taken, and knowing that these people will continue to make sure that there's a historical preservation side. So I appreciate you coming and also expressing your concerns as well. So,
Wait, can I make a comment? I just want to say it so that we're not taking it for granted that I think the folks from the Union Station Foundation that are here, volunteers, and also members of the administration who have worked really hard to make sure that you have put a proposal in front of us that works for both sides, and that it's really nice to know that as we jump into this, we're not jumping into it alone. You know, I think we can all agree that we can do a lot better when we do it together, and I hope you guys feel the same way. But I just want to make a note of that because I think it's a really big deal. So thank you to those that have contributed to that. Yeah.
We're very happy to have the city working with us on a much more efficient basis than it is.
Good.
We very much appreciate it.
Makes the decision a lot easier for me.
agreed. All right, that one down. Reports from the Planning Commission.
This is the Greg Montgomery Show for the next 3 items.
Mr. Montgomery, welcome.
That's what I was thinking too.
Song that goes with that too?
No, there's not a song. Definitely wouldn't want me doing it. The first item on your agenda for consideration is a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding a request from Weber County regarding amending the West Ogden Community Plan, dealing with specifically the E Avenue trailhead, which also included parking and a restroom. Just to give you a background, the community plan was developed in 2014. In that, it also included part of getting the closure plan for the landfill completed, to get development happening. And one of the things we heard from the neighborhood was the fact that they felt there needed to be additional access to what would become the park, that being the old landfill site, now being called Observatory Park. In making those improvements, one of the plan items talked about creating a parking lot and a restroom facility at E Avenue as part of the neighborhood access into the park, as well as the parking lot that had been planned in the closure plan on A Avenue. And as development takes place in and around the activities of the park, then a restroom in that location. One of the items of discussion was, is there really a need for a restroom on the E Avenue side? The photo on your left shows you from the trailhead area, the restroom across the street. And even as you go back a little bit further into that trailhead area, there's a close proximity. That restroom is only 420 feet. So it seems like it'd be duplicating public efforts to create 2 restrooms within such a short distance. And as the county brought forth that argument, the Planning Commission felt that was very reasonable, that you have a facility there, generally with all the types of activities you have on trails, and that you don't have restrooms that close together. The the main focus of the general public coming into this park is going to be off of A Avenue, where there's a lot larger parking lot. And the E Avenue is really meant to get the neighborhood into the park instead of having to go all the way to the end of the neighborhood to get into the park. So it made sense to take a look at removing that restroom requirement. The other concern was developing a trailhead in this location would put it right next to homes. You see this home, which would be on the east side of that parking lot if the parking lot was developed there. How it has very little buffering. It's opened up on that side, and the concern was introducing parking kind of hidden back off the street, and the only impact or only policing, if you will, would be what the neighbor sees going on, and it has been a fair burden to put that onto them to both monitor and deal with a parking lot that may be placed in that area. So, given, I'll go back to this one photo too, that you have the West Ogden Park with all the parking available along the curbside, both to the north and to the west, that there is sufficient parking for the neighborhood use, though most people, as this photo shows, are within walking distance of that E Avenue. That is a 660-foot radius from E Avenue, showing that it includes most of the neighborhood, the housing areas in East Central. So, based on this, the Planning Commission felt it to be appropriate to amend the language of the West Ogden Community Plan to talk about the trailhead on E Avenue being a pedestrian trailhead and not have the parking or the restroom on it. And also that as that language is changed, it would change the map. The map shows that that little symbol at the bottom shows parking, and going to that yellow circle would be just taking that out of that symbol out of that map so that it reads as a trailhead but not with parking requirement. As the Planning Commission reviewed this, they have recommended 6-1 to recommend approval of this amendment. The one dissenting vote was a concern of the county putting in a restroom on A Avenue, and would that really ever happen? So that is the recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Was the dissenting vote?
Who? Well,
who and why?
Well, that's what I just mentioned, that they wondered if the county would ever really put in the restroom on A Avenue.
All right, I didn't understand that.
Oh,
okay.
Greg, in the wording, we've crossed out parking for trail users at West Ogden Park. But in our wording, we say without, there's a pedestrian trailhead at the south end of the E Avenue without parking and restrooms. As you were just showing us the pictures, that's quite, what I'm thinking in my head is it's more of parking and use of restroom will be in conjunction with the city park located on E Avenue.
Yeah, I think that could be a clarification too, to just say West Ogden Park and the trailhead kind of work together to create that.
Because really that's what we're doing. If you go back to that, or if you're just in that one picture, that's, here we've crossed out parking and restrooms for trail users, but really there is a restroom there. It's just in conjunction with the park.
Right.
That's 420 feet away or whatever.
Yes.
It seems like there was a misunderstanding because a citizen also voiced concerns that we would be taking the existing restroom away, but I think we still have a restroom there, and I think there's probably a misunderstanding.
Correct. That was explained at the Planning Commission meeting. There was no intent to take out the West Ogden Park restroom.
Councilmember Garner, do you want, I guess, do you want additional language that would actually
I'm just thinking if we
that?
just, tweak that language, just say in conjunction, parking and restroom use will be in conjunction with West Ogden Park. I would like that in there.
Which takes care of what you're saying,
right, which
Councilmember Stevens,
eliminates
about
that confusion from the citizens saying, you're going to close this restroom or you're taking this restroom away. That's not our intent at all.
No.
I think it's well to have that clarification in that aspect there.
Does that change our noticing at all? Can we make that much of a tweak without?
Yeah, and well, I'll speak from, my thought would be, yes, you can make that revision without changing the intent, because again,
That's what I'm
what's
saying. We're
been
not
explained all the way
changing the
through.
intent.
Yeah.
Just clarifying better. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other comments? All right. Thank you. What's that?
Public input.
Oh, sorry, I always forget the public input part. This is an opportunity for anyone to come up and talk about the West Ogden Community Plan Amendment.
Seeing there's no movement, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the proposed ordinance 2017-37 with that amended language of the joint use of that restroom at West Ogden Park.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Garner, second by Councilmember Blair, to adopt proposed ordinance 2017-37 with the amended language. Do you want to specify that language again?
Just that the trailhead will have a restroom located at West Ogden Park that can be used in conjunction, or I said it better on the recording, but it will be in conjunction with the use of West Ogden Park. But the intent is that the restroom is not being closed.
All right. We have a motion. You got all of that? Okay. All right. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Garner.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right.
So the next item is a got to go back to this. So the next item is a cleanup item regarding a recent state law on food trucks. With SB 250, it did a couple things. It defined what a food truck is, and it gave it two characteristics that it could be defined as a food truck. One being a self-contained vehicle or a trailer where a person stands inside. Either one would become, by definition, a food truck. They also talked about an ice cream truck and defining it. And so as we took a look at those and the third one was taking out some language regarding distances of food trucks from restaurants. So as we took a look at that language and said, okay, how can we apply that to Ogden to come into compliance, we looked at a couple of things. The new definition of a food truck really created a problem for us in the sense that it said it could be a trailer where you're stand inside. Well, we have street vendors who have carts where you stand inside. Now, by definition, they can become a food truck, which then opens up everything else that can become a food truck. That's something we don't want on the sidewalks. And so we needed to make a distinction in our ordinance that the street vendors, even though they may be by definition of the state a food truck, we would still call them sidewalk vendors and have different regulations, our sidewalk vendor ordinance, rather than letting the food trucks and a trailer being driven up onto the sidewalk and with all its self-containment stay there. So we want to make sure we made a clarification there. We also then created language, even though we have it in our business license, we don't have it in zoning, about ice cream vendors, to then clarify that an ice cream truck is allowed. It can drive the streets and it sells the ice cream and frozen novelties when people request them to stop, that they keep moving throughout. And so we added that definition into the ordinance, so it's not just found in the business code. Then we went to clarify the item regarding the restaurants. We had a separation of no food truck could be within 100 feet of a restaurant. The specifics language in the state provision talked about you can't create a specific distance. So what we're recommending is to take away that distance requirement, but just note that directly in front of the building, in front of the property line of that building that has a restaurant, they would need the restaurant owner's approval. Again, meaning what we had heard as concerns when we first introduced the food trucks of the competition between the built restaurant and those on food trucks, that even though they may have some different markets, to not interfere with each other. When we had our work session, one of the recommendations of the Planning Commission was to remain with the language of 100-foot distance from a church property line. The council had questions about that, so we, with the council staff, had looked at revising some language regarding that distance also. And what we felt would be appropriate is have similar language that we do with restaurants, saying that if you're in front of the property of a place of worship, that then you'd need that place of worship's approval to be in front of their property line, taking away the 100-foot distance, the same as we had with restaurants, and having both of them now in the same situation of just receiving approval to be in front of the property that they control. So that is a revision you have in your ordinance tonight that the Planning Commission did not see or talk about. But as staff, we feel, based on the discussions we had, that that'd be an appropriate amendment. So the Planning Commission also talked about that with the food truck, food trailer limitations, that they cannot be on public property, but they're allowed to be in any location they're invited to. So the church parking lot for some church activity, some fundraiser for whoever it may be. If they're invited to those properties, then they could be there, and that's also a clarification that we have put into the ordinance. The Planning Commission then recommended on a 6-0 vote the items that I mentioned being amended, excluding the one for the distance in churches, but that's the one that you had recommended be included.
Questions for Mr. Montgomery?
I did have an initial question about the places of worship. Now, they can be in any zone.
Correct.
And do they need to be identified as such in, the thing I was just coming up with is just trying to think outside the box a little bit. Is somebody going to say, well, my house is a place of worship, or I don't know. I just wondered if there was some opportunity to.
Well, you may, but I think at that point, realizing that the food trucks only be in commercial zones or into the invited area, but not on public property, you'd have to then have a lot big enough to have a truck get onto your lot to hold that event of that church.
All right.
And it couldn't happen on the street.
Yeah, I think the commercial zone thing is probably going to be the issue there.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Just try to.
No, that's good.
Explore all avenues. So.
And Greg, will you just clarify for me the requirements along 25th Street for food trucks again?
So one of the difficulties is they need to be in a place where you can parallel park, and 25th Street is angled parking, so you don't have the dimensions to be able to maneuver a food truck without changing the way that you park on the street, because they can't fit in on an angled parking. So 25th Street and even the junction are two areas, because of our angled parking, become difficult.
But during the farmers market, they're okay.
When you would close off the street and have a special event.
Because it's a special event. Thank you.
The same way with the junction, if they have an event there,
if they had a special event and they close the street off, then that could take place.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
So this is an opportunity to receive public input on the food truck ordinance. Anyone want to come up and talk about food trucks? Frozen novelties?
Seeing no movement, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2017-38.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Garner, second by Councilmember Lopez to adopt proposed ordinance 2017-38. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
Aye, that passes. Great.
You're up again.
And the last item.
Da-da-da-da-da.
So this is another state law clarification to our ordinance. And what this is basically trying to get at is that sometimes the language and jargon in ordinances can become something different than what they were intended to be. And the way we use words can have different meanings to different people. So this state law provision was trying to take a look at clarifying language, so what is it called, plain language, and how you interpret that, so people all have that same understanding. This is really kind of the first part of things we'll be looking at in the ordinance. And one of the challenges we have whenever you do a land use ordinance is that uses come and go over time, and what they mean come and go over time. These are some uses that are presently found in our ordinance, which I dare you try to find such a business that exists today. Even such as blueprinting and photostatting, that has gone by the wayside. Baby formula services, diaper cleaning services, it's all disposable, so you don't worry about that. Things change, and so those definitions change, or what they mean change. And so that's an example of challenges you have with the land use. And depending on the format that we use, some things may be assumed, but they may not be clear. For example, we have 3 different formats in our zoning ordinance, one in residential zones, one in commercial, one in manufacturing. Each takes a different approach of how you determine and define land uses. In our residential, we only explain what is allowed. We don't list all the things that are not allowed, and it's assumed because of that list, you would know that if you're not there, you're not allowed. Well, state law is trying to say you can't assume that, because some people will say, well, maybe again under this idea, just because you didn't define it didn't mean you don't want it there. And so we need to have clarifications. In our commercial or manufacturing zones, we give broad definitions, so we don't try to create specifics for every use. But that can still give some leeway of, okay, do I really fit into this category? And then again, like I said, then we have these challenges of trying to anticipate things that are not existent. So we try to define 3 situations that may exist in the ordinance. The first one is where a use is listed as permitted, but maybe it's not listed in another area. And the assumption can be made, well, if you don't list it, but you say it's permitted here, so it could be permitted there. We're trying to specify clearly that where it's first listed, it's first allowed. And you can't make an assumption that trickles down to less intense zone uses. Because going up in intensity of use, you'll start to list more and more uses, but you don't do that going down in the present format we have. So an example I gave here is if you say an R2 zone allows duplexes, the person will say, well, R2 also allows single family. So in the single family zone, it doesn't say anything about duplexes, so therefore I can do duplexes, because you already say they can be mixed with single family uses. So this is clarifying if it's limited as a permitted use in one district, it can't be transferred to a less intense, thinking it's allowed there also. It's where it's first permitted, that's where you first consider it. The second scenario is maybe the use is prohibited in one zone, but you can't transfer it, saying, well, if it's prohibited here, but you don't list it here, therefore it's allowed. So this very slight deviation from the first, but it's taking the idea of what's not allowed. So if you say it's not allowed here, and again, because you may not mention it lower on, you can't assume that it's not allowed, that it is permitted because it's not listed in the lower district. So this one, I give the example of an amusement park. We say in a C1, C2 zone, amusement parks are not allowed, but they're allowed in C3 zones. Well, you can't make the assumption that because you said it's not allowed in C1 and C2, you didn't say it's not allowed in R5 or R4, that therefore it's allowed. Just a slight change, but you list where it's first not allowed rather than what's first permitted. Slight variation, but still the same concept. Wherever it's first allowed, and if you have other areas not allowed, you can't assume it's allowed because you didn't say it's not allowed in the lower districts. Now, I know it's really subtle,
So how does that apply going to like the manufacturing? Is that considered a more intense use then? And
yes, so
it would be allowed there?
Yeah, generally in the hierarchy of uses, the least intense would be R1 single family, and then it gradually becomes more intense with R2, which allows duplex. R3, your density becomes higher, till R5, where you got the highest density. And then commercial is higher density than they are, but as C1 is a low commercial, C2 medium, and C3 regional, then M1 becomes higher than commercial. So you have that higher.
Example of something that is I think there are some things that are allowed in a C zone that is not allowed in a manufacturing zone.
That's correct.
So how does this work?
So how that works in this scenario, and this is where, because we have those different formats, which also becomes the confusing part we have right now. And like I said, this is the first step of things we need to clarify. So if it's allowed, say it's allowed in C3, well, then you get to the M zone, and the M zone has a whole different character of how you define uses. And you try to make the jump that, okay, if it doesn't fit into that specific category, which really becomes this number 3. So I'm going to just kind of use this to get into that. It's not really described in the manufacturing zones the way it's described in the commercial zones. So therefore it says that we look at, is this use compatible or comparable to other maybe permitted uses? So does it have the same parking demands, same hours of operation, use the same amount of land, have outdoor storage or not have outdoor storage? If all those things are compatible, then we can make the assumption, yes, then it's allowed in that also. If it is not listed as permitted or not allowed, period, in that zone.
Isn't similar subjective, though?
Well, I threw the word up similar just to kind of get your thought, but really what we talk about in the ordinance are very specific things. Parking, hours of operation, storage, those, so we don't use the word similar, we'd say all these types of things that you look at and say, okay, yes, this is equal in impact to a listed use.
Okay, let's look at a use of an SOB. How would that apply to something like this?
To
sexually oriented business?
Oh, I didn't get your, okay. So those, both in the commercial and manufacturing zone, we have specific listings on that. So there's not a question of, well, is it similar? We say in the order specifically, these are things that make you a sexually oriented business. And then we have defined that it's not permitted here or is permitted here. So we don't have any of that wiggle room in our zones for that type of use. We're very specific and very clear where it is and where it's not allowed. So
okay. So you don't see that as being a problem with any of this? Okay.
No. So those are the 3 different provisions the ordinance talks about. Now, if someone disagrees with how things are being interpreted, there are always 2 ways to approach that. One is to petition, then to amend the zoning text, and that can happen any time. Or the second option is to go to the Board of Adjustments seeking a determination that there's been an administrative error in how the ordinance has been applied. Those are always 2 routes that anyone has when there's a disagreement. So those are still available to the individuals. And the Planning Commission, again, recommended this approval to you on a 6-0 vote.
And I don't know exactly what I'm asking, but does it affect any of the conditional overlay zones, or does it have any effect on those? Or
no, these provisions that we're talking about right now do not. It still talks about the fact that we need to take a look and say, are things clear to people? We really do need to go back and look at all our language and say, is it clear? Is it plain? Can people understand what the real meaning is? Not just, oh, this is what I think it is. And so this, like I said, is the first step to how do we interpret our present ordinance. But we need to work on making those other changes to make sure that everything is clear and simple.
And do you have a plan to do second,
yes, we
third
do.
step?
Yeah. We've already have made a list of, I think we've got about 45 items we've identified where it is not clear or where we see conflicting statements. And so we're working on that as a staff to say, okay, we've identified them, now let's try to make those corrections.
Questions? Great. I think we're good.
That's great.
All right, this is a public input on the clarification of, sorry, I laugh every time, the clarification of allowable land uses, because it's clear as mud.
Yeah.
All right, public input, I'm sorry. No?
Seeing no movement, Chair White, I would make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 2017-36.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2017-36. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
That passes. I mean, aye. That passes. Next is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding any issues or any topics. If you want to come up and address us, please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Kerry Wayne. I live at 309 South, 1200 West, Marriott, Slaterville. I'm your neighbor. You've seen me before because I've been here a year and a half ago, and I gave you the wonderful gift of a copy of DVD of Fern Gully, and apparently...
Yeah, the other microphone's not working, so go ahead and use that one.
I think it's working, Cal. Just...
Hello?
It's not on.
Hello?
There it is.
Oh, okay. I gave you a copy of Fern Gully. Apparently you've been really busy. You only watched the part up to where it was a bad guys had a great idea that was perfect to destroy a woodland paradise. Nature Center. Sound familiar? Okay. The other thing is I asked for things about BDO, the operation of BDO. Has not anything happened. I met with Mark Johnson, Blake Wallen. I was promised that I would be able to attend the planning meetings. It's been a year and a half. I called Blake on our anniversary, asked him how come I haven't gotten an invitation. He said, well, when it affects you, I'll call you. And I believe it affects me each and every day. There is no input from the community. I believe when we decided that we were going to do away with the Nature Center and also the parking for the Golden Spike, I don't think Marriott Slaterville was talked to. We're going to have it in our front yard. So, but hopefully it's gone away. Overnight construction. I asked you about this 3 years ago. Still going on, still same stuff. Substandard security. We have people all the time over there doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. I have had motorcycle racing all summer long in front of the Wayfair warehouse. Echoes right straight across to me. I've finally called up Blake on a cell phone. Get your butt over here and get this taken care of. I said, they've been out here for 3 hours plus. The other times they've been there all day. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's things that go on over there that shouldn't be going on, and it's a matter of security doesn't come out and take a look. You call the after-hours help desk. They answer Ogden Business Depot. They don't know where Ogden Business Depot is. I asked about that. That's been 3 years going. Truck traffic, as things get busier over there, we're seeing truck traffic on 1200 West. It's not supposed to be there. It's limited to 10 tons. Shouldn't be on that road. Light pollution, nothing done on that as well. Like I say, they've started a dark skies initiative over in Marriott Slaterville. Doesn't do any good if you guys are, on the other side of the fence. That fence doesn't stop the light. Encroachment of the Nature Center, again, I can't emphasize what a diamond that place is. I don't know why you'd ever consider getting rid of it, but I don't think it would have happened if it hadn't been that Mayor thought there was a consensus on the board. It's a matter of, you don't do that by yourself. And so I'd like something done. I mean, I've been reasonable and I've waited long enough.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Do you want to address any of those, or?
Sure. Is this part of the mayor's comments?
No, I'll let you.
Okay. Well, I would say that we have had numerous meetings, and you have Blake Wallen's cell phone and also the number of the police department. Sometimes there are going to be conflicts, and we apologize for your frustration out there. Fact is, that's going to continue to grow, and we want to be good neighbors and partners, and that's why we've invited you in and encouraged the dialogue. Sometimes when we don't always get everything that we want or we hope, then I understand that can be frustrating. It's been frustrating for me having people put a lot of words in my mouth about our intent for the Nature Center. I don't know what you've read and what you've heard. If you took the time to look into that, you know that we had talked with the Nature Center, we had talked with the county commissioners, there was an agreement as we went into this. This wasn't a unilateral end run on my end to do anything. We've tried to be collaborative and open with all of our conversations, and apologize for your frustrations.
Thank you. Comments from the mayor?
I would add my appreciation for the Union Station volunteers that have put so much time, energy, and resources into that. That was kind of put upon them about 10 years ago, and I think they've done a yeoman's job with the limited resources that were given to them, and I really do appreciate everything they've done. I think this was a great step, and I do agree with everyone that I think that's going to be a gem for downtown Ogden.
Comments from the council members? No comments? Oh. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Garner to adjourn the meeting. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That's fast. All right. We're going on to our redevelopment agency meeting. So this is the special redevelopment agency meeting of August 22nd, 2017. Please note that all board members are present. We have a couple of agenda items. The first one is approval of minutes. The special meeting of December 6th, 2016. Board member Stevens.
Yes, Chair, they're correct.
The regular meeting of May 9th, 2017, Board Member Lopez.
Yes, Chair White, I review the minutes, found them to be accurate.
The closed executive session of May 9th, 2017, Board Member Garner.
Yes, Chair White, I've reviewed those minutes and found them to be correct to the best of my recollection.
And the special meeting of May 16th, 2017, Board Member Nadolski.
Thank you, Chair White. They're accurate to my recollection, and I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Nadolski, second by Board Member Garner. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. They are approved. Next on the agenda is reports from administration.
Mr. Cooper will be handling all of the items today. He drove everyone. He drove everyone away.
One at a time.
He dances. He doesn't sing.
Let's do that one. Yeah. Thank you. Chair White, members of the board, thank you for your time and congratulations on the action that was taken in the previous meeting regarding Union Station. I think that is epic, and the hard work begins today. So that'll take a village to raise that child, I'm sure. So I have three important projects to discuss tonight. The first one is related to Resolution 2017-5, which is resolution approving a participation and incentive agreement with OBE Vision LLC on behalf of the SR56 company. SR56 is a subsidiary company of the CL Royale company, which is an international bicycle components manufacturer. The OBE Vision LLC group, if you recall, is the developer who's responsible for developing the Ogden Business Exchange. The purpose for engaging with SR56 in this manner was simply to facilitate short-term and long-term expansion of CL Royale in to the community. Ciel Royale represents a number of bicycling brands that have a cult following in some cases, and so we felt that the Ciel Royale brand would be an excellent complement to the other outdoor recreation brands, and especially the bicycling manufacturing brands that are currently working and doing business in Ogden. With that company comes the startup of SR56, that part of their business. It's a research and development division of Ciel Royale, and the building was purpose-built for that type of work that SR56 would be doing. They will initially start with 7 jobs, but as it is with a number of these types of companies, they tend to be a floodgate to other companies. Envy is really kind of one of those floodgates. If you recall the Amer Sports deal many years ago, that really started the floodgate for some of the outdoor recreation brands. So we have precedent in kind of seeding some of these key companies that are in these industries and allowing that seed investment to grow into other job creation. So in this case, Envy was our connection to Ciel Royale, and Ciel Royale is our connection to other companies that will potentially bring more jobs. We're currently working with one today that would potentially bring 50 jobs in the near term, and then Ciel Royale has expressed interest in bringing other divisions that they have in California and Tennessee and potentially from Italy to the Ogden community and doing business all together as one unit. So that's a very specific part of our strategy that has worked in the past, and we continue to do that. Again, it's the outdoor recreation cluster. That's one of our 3 cluster initiatives that we focus on. I believe we're finding success across the spectrum of that cluster, and so they represent a very unique and positive brand in that whole industry. With the incentive comes the construction, as I mentioned, of a building. It's 15,850 square feet. It's occupied solely by SR56. They wanted to have a prominent location, yet a location that allows them to do their research and development without prying eyes. So that building has been designed and would suit their needs very well for the long term. It allows them to expand well beyond the 7 employees that they are initially bringing on. I believe they can house up to 45 employees in that building comfortably in terms of desk space and things like that. And most of their employees will be part of that creative class that is so important in creating a vibrant economy in the community. That creative class consists of engineers and design professionals, people who have college educations and who are working to promote the creative industry. So most of the folks that will work in the building will have those types of credentials, and we hope to get them to live in the community and spend money in the community and help create that fabric that is so important. And I mentioned the potential future opportunity. We feel that SR56, i.e. Ciel Royale, is that gateway brand that will help us connect to some of these other companies that would do well doing business here in Ogden. So we've done a lot of hard work to get to this point. We've discussed how this might work with the developer. We've discussed how this would work with Ciel Royale and SR56 themselves. We've drafted the participation and incentive agreement, which has been accepted and approved by OBE Vision. That's in your packet. And they're ready to occupy pending tonight's decision. So specifically related to the terms of the agreement, SR56 has signed a 5-year with a 5-year extension term with OBE, and in that 5 years, the market rate of the building is 75 cents. They are willing to pay 38 cents for the space, and so the remaining amount to get to the 75 cents market rate is what you see before you. So year 1 would be $157,890. Year 2 is $99. Year 3 is $89, $91, and $93 respectively. So overall, it's $531,412 over the 5 years. And this would allow the developer to actually break even on the space. So we obviously wanted to incentivize Ciel Royale to start up the division here and to create those jobs, but we didn't want it to be at the expense of a single individual, in this case OBE Vision. So they were willing to take that risk. Now, we have been successful, based on some comments that we received, in negotiating an amendment to the participation and incentive agreement. That amendment is not in your packet. It would need additional further approval by you in a future date, but that amendment essentially says that in the event that SR 56 would vacate the initial term of the lease, which is that first 5 years, and OBE Vision was able to retain a new tenant that would pay the full 75 cents, then our incentive would go away. And that basically protects from the developer from getting a double dip, essentially, from getting a full market rate tenant and the incentive from the city. So in the event that SR 56 for some reason breaks that lease, and they are able to recruit and sign a lease with a new tenant, then our incentive goes away. So that's a new development to what's in your packet, and that would need to receive additional further approval from you folks. But it has been sent to the developer. He's approved it, and so it's just awaiting your action. So that is the SR 56 participation and incentive agreement. Before I move on, can I answer any questions about that?
The jobs, are those local, or are they bringing them in from other parts of the country?
No, these are all local. These are all new jobs. They didn't exist before, and they are all being hired from folks in the area. I'm trying to get exactly where those folks live. That's always hard to kind of drill down to personal information like your address, but we're still working on that.
And the 50 would be local
50 would be local. Those would be new jobs as well. That would be a new company that wouldn't exist here now coming in and hiring those new jobs.
Can I put a wrinkle in that? Does that include a sublease as well?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Any tenant that would create that situation, right? Subleases are not allowed specifically, so it would only be a tenant that would come in anew.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
I appreciate the clarification on the amendment that you offered. I think that was in part as a result of conversations we had in the work session. So thanks for listening and moving forward, and appreciate it.
Thanks for the feedback.
All right. Any other comments? Questions? So since the amendment isn't part of this, we will be looking at that in probably a couple of weeks. We just wanted to have that amendment be more transparent than just adding it on tonight. So we're passing this, and then you'll see the amendment in a few weeks.
Ready for a motion?
Ready for a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2015-5. Or sorry, 2017-5.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Board Member Blair, second by Vice Chair Heyer, to adopt proposed resolution 2017-5. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Garner?
Aye.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member Nadolski?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
Aye, that passes. And thank you for your work, too, on that amendment, and we look forward to seeing that.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. Next up is the Swift Building acquisition. This is a personal favorite of mine. So in the packet formally is Resolution 2017-6, which would be approving the terms and conditions of a real estate purchase contract for the 7.34 acres that is comprised of the Swift Building just east of the Ogden River near the kayak park. So the objective here is to purchase the building through certain analysis, but clearly just looking at the building, it's a building that is unoccupiable, unfortunately, and it is not able to be reused. So our objective here is to purchase it and remove it, salvage what is salvageable. I think there's a lot of things that are still in there that could be sold, which is happening as we speak. And then there's some materials that the building is made of that can be salvaged. So we would want to see the building, as we did with the rest of the stockyards, go to as many useful places as possible. But the goal here is to remove it and to allow for future more desirable development.
Well, the purchase of this is going to purchase its contents as it sits today?
Right. So in the agreement, they have up until, they have until closing. We've allowed for 45 days in the agreement during the period of demolition that would allow the seller to come back and to salvage parts of the building, so brick and wood and steel, things like that. So as we create a demolition scope, we'll allow for that. We'll protect with some indemnification agreements for people coming on site, and they'll be able to take some of that material.
Is this the family or who that's coming on site?
This is the Smith family.
How do we
Kathy Smith.
justify the ones coming on the site, whether they're part of this family?
Well, we've done this in the past, so we have an agreement that basically is a waiver of liability. Anybody who is desiring to come to the site, which would only be Kathy Smith at this point. There's no other person that has authority. But any person that would come to the site would sign the waiver, and then they would be allowed to work with our crews to take out some of the material. So to answer your question specifically, what's left in the building when we close, we own.
Okay, but it sounds like they have salvage rights.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't get to make any money on the salvage.
They have salvage rights for a period of time.
Right, a limited amount of time, only 45 days.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just kind of curious as to how come that would be part of the deal.
Well, I mean, there's some emotional attachment to the building for that family, and they wanted to be sure that they could take some of that building with them and use that in various ways in their businesses or their own personal properties. And through the negotiations, that seemed like something that we could mitigate the risk of doing, and helped us get to the conclusion that we arrived at. So.
Okay, so it's kind of like memento type stuff. Is that what we're talking about? Or?
Right, brick specifically, right. Wood. So the building materials that comprise the building.
Right.
If there were items to be sold or that could be sold, do we do that, or do we allow someone else to do that for us?
We can do that ourselves. We could allow someone else. We're working that out right now. There are going to be some things there that could be resold. Again, they're not taking all the brick or all the wood or all the building materials. It's an enormous building. So we'll have the ability to figure out how to get some of that into the hands of folks that can use it. Anything that goes out of the building, even if it leaves for free, is less that we have to take to the dump. So that saves in environmental impacts. It also saves in truck time, in cost, real hard costs. So we're working through how we can do that safely and orderly, so that we can get through the massive amount of stuff that's there, and then also the massive building.
So are we liable for those people coming onto the site then, or?
Yes, that's the reason for the waiver. They would sign the waiver releasing all liability to the city. So it's no secret that building has tremendous historic value, which we're documenting through a 106 review that is required because it's part of the redevelopment area. So we're currently working through that. So we'll do all the same documentation that we did for the stockyards for the Swift building. But even though it is historically significant as it relates to the industry that built Ogden as well as the stockyards, it is an eyesore, and it's an eyesore that's right at the front door of the city. So that's a major reason why it needs to go away. It also has, as we found out through our investigation, some issues related to barrels that contain elements that need to be disposed of properly. Those could potentially pose a risk to the public health, so we want to get those removed and disposed of properly. We don't want to leave that to someone who may or may not do it well. And maybe most importantly, the acquisition is for the purpose of getting enough of the riparian zone necessary to expand the banks of the river, to create a welcoming approach to the Weber River, to allow for people to recreate in hopefully a newly constructed kayak park. Fishing could become more popular there. So having that extra land to create all of those new uses, I think, is a key factor in bringing back productive activity to that area. I mentioned just cleaning up the welcoming to our city, and it's also a part of the West Ogden Community Plan. When those community members got together, they recognized what this was doing to their community, and they wanted to see some changes, and so that is satisfying that part of the plan. So again, the process to get here has been very long, and we've gone back and forth. We feel like we're at the best position that we could be at with this deal. So going forward, we would like to, based on tonight's action, we would perfect the acquisition, which would happen the 24th. That would be the closing date. We would move right into environmental cleanup. We've done enough investigation to now bid out a scope of work that an environmental cleanup company could respond to, give us a firm price quote and a schedule, and we can move forward with that activity. And then on to demolition. We would want to get to the demolition soon after the environmental cleanup is done, as to not allow the building to be an attractant to vagrants and to homeless folks that are, I'm sure, anxious to get in there, not to mention a whole bunch of other people. Then once the demolition is down, we'd focus on development activities, so subdivision, transfer of that section of land necessary for the river expansion. We're looking at a rezone possibly, and then plans for future development. So I'd like to focus on the three highlighted portions for tonight. The acquisition started a long time ago. Those discussions started a while ago, and we had two appraisals done. Our first appraisal was for 1.5. And then the other appraisal was for $1,085,000. So we set the original purchase price for $1,085,000, and then renegotiated that purchase price to $400,000 once we did some due diligence and found out the level of potential contaminants that are there. So in the agreement that is in your packet, you'll see the purchase price at $400,000. At that original discussion point, we also estimated demo and cleanup of $750,000, again, not knowing what we were getting into. So after further investigation, we realized that barrel removal is quoted to be up to $1.3 million. Given the fact that we're guessing at a lot of that, I believe that's high. Asbestos, again, is $250,000 based on some initial quotes that we have. And then just cleaning up some of the dirt and stains and spills on the outside is $150,000 estimated. And then our revised demolition and haul-off is now $500,000. That's just, once the building's clean, that's just taking the building away. So if you summarize all of those together, the original plan was to acquire the building and clean it up and demolish it for $1.875. After our investigation and our analysis with some professionals that look at these things, then we're seeing our purchase and closing at $417,450 with barrel removal at potentially 1.3, asbestos at 250, demolition at 5, and dirt cleanup at 150. So 2.617. Our current funding appropriation is at 2.2. Those were the funds that we were able to put together for this project. So we have some work to do in terms of getting these costs down, and I think we've discussed some of them tonight, selling some of the materials that are there, allowing people to come in and take them for free. All of that reduces our costs. And the biggest one there, which is the barrel removal, is the big gotcha. And based on the methodology that was used to get that number, I believe that it will come way down once we realize that we're dealing with hydraulic fluid and motor oil versus arsenic or whatever. I don't even know if arsenic comes in a liquid. So I mentioned after the closing and the cleanup and the demolition happens, we would then move to look at subdivision and creating that section of land that would be necessary for the river cleanup. So this picture depicts where that piece of land goes, and you see that it would be impossible to do the river improvements with the building there because this area is actually inside the building footprint. So this is a very exciting step, and it will be the first step in really creating a new life for the Weber River. And then I mentioned rezoning it. We're still working on what the new zone could look like, but I believe we want it to be more restrictive than the zone that it's currently in so that it disallows some of the uses that would potentially want to go there. And then again, plans for the future could be the expansion of the downtown, certainly trailhead improvements, a new kayak park. We had original conversations with Brenntag about moving their western location over to the east side of the river to be consolidated with the tank farm that they have there now. Their interest, I think, has dried up, which is good because, given some additional ideas and plans that we have, I believe that wouldn't be the highest and best use for the property anymore. So at this point, after we go through all of this, if approved tonight, then the plan would be to sit on it until we have a firm and desirable development opportunity. So that is the Swift building acquisition. Any questions about that?
Where's the funds coming from to pay for the project?
We've used $912,000 from an interagency fund that was a transfer from the sewer fund. And then we have, I believe, 1.125 from the CIP. And then 165,000 from the CIP as well that still needs to have, I believe, a budget opening for.
Okay, this is probably a late question in all of this. Is it just one of the buildings, or are they both connected? From your Google Maps, it looks like there's two buildings.
There's multiple, and yes, they're all connected.
All connected.
And they're all coming down.
Got it, okay. All right, any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, a comment. I think it's safe to say that your due diligence is paid off here. And I think it's come a long way in terms of protecting the city's interests. So appreciate your hard work on that.
Can you maybe review a little bit what risk we have with this as a city in this project? Is it we must have some type of risk going into this project?
We always do with these kind of things. Well, the immediate risk would be whether or not that cleanup number is going to be at where it's at now, lower or higher. If it's where it's at now or higher, then we have a real issue with the funding appropriations that we currently have. And so we're going to work really hard with internal resources and external resources to get those numbers down. Again, we've discussed this a lot with the environmental professionals and a lot of folks, and we feel like we can get that number down. But there could be some unforeseen conditions that we haven't planned on, and that's a big risk. The second risk would be the $912,000. That's an interagency transfer from the sewer fund. There's a note attached to that would need to be repaid. That repayment comes from the sale and future development of the property, and so the longer that doesn't happen, then the more the longer we wait to get those monies repaid back to us.
What's a timeline that you have when the building would actually be in the process of coming down?
We would like to utilize the winter to our benefit and bid this out in a way that would get good pricing back from contractors as the summer season slows down and they look at going into winter. Then that workload shifts a little bit. So generally you can get better prices. If the winter holds and we have a light winter, then we can actually perform the work during the late fall, early winter. But my goal is to at least get the bid out and get the contract secured so that we could do the work as the weather allows or first thing come spring.
All right, any other comments, questions? Thanks. Just need a motion.
Chair White, I would make a motion that we adopt 17-6.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Board Member Nadolski to adopt proposed resolution 2017-6. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Garner.
Aye.
Board Member Lopez.
Aye.
Board Member Nadolski.
Aye.
Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes.
Good job, Brad.
Thank you. You ready for one more? Do we need a break?
Talk fast.
Okay, talk fast. This one's fairly straightforward. The resolution in the packet is 2017-7. It's for the approval of the real estate purchase contract to purchase 445 25th Street, which is commonly known as the Courtyard Inn. Again, the objective here is to purchase and demolish the building. It sits in an awkward location. That location isn't really viable to have another building put back in its place. So our goal is to demolish the building and to create a transition space that would not only benefit the hotel, but it would also create an interesting reason for people to navigate up 25th Street past Washington Boulevard and potentially into a new creative district. There has been a condition of blight and of code violations in that property for the last little while. They've rectified them to a certain point over the last little bit, but it is still an issue and kind of a pinch point for some of those things. We'd like to disperse that a little bit. Again, expanding that 25th Street vibe that exists currently on historic 25th Street up to the east side of 25th Street is a major objective, and then to facilitate that new creative district and that transition space that would be so important to Ben Lomond in the future. We've had lots of negotiations, not only with the property owner, but with the folks at the Ben Lomond. That has been purchased recently and has seen some new renovations. And so we've been working with them as to how they would participate in long-term maintenance of the space once it was acquired and opened up for the public and for their use. So they're interested in taking on that maintenance component long-term. That helps offset some of the costs that would otherwise be ours. Thane Fisher, who's doing the Ogden Arts Garage just to the east of that, he's interested in participating and making sure that whatever happens in this space in terms of a plaza would be really beneficial to not only him, but the surrounding area. So we are looking at closing this year, but then the hotel owner would be a one-year occupant of the building. And I'll explain that here. So the total purchase price is $970,000. We would pay $250,000 this year, and then we would actually close and take title. There would be a note issued on the property. That note would be payable in the one-year anniversary of the closing date for $750,000, totaling the $970,000. At that time, they would have, I believe, 30 days to vacate the premises, and then we can commence demolition and redevelopment of the plaza. So, just a key point: tonight's request is just for the purchase and acquisition of the courtyard. It's not for funding approval for the plaza or any of those things. It's just for the purchase of the motel.
Brandon, during that one-year period, the current owners, who will then be our tenants, will they keep that revenue from renting those rooms out still?
Right.
But we will have greater impact on controlling the issues that we've had with the time periods that they've rented out rooms and different things like that.
Right. So in the real estate purchase contract, as an exhibit, there's an occupancy of a post-closing occupancy agreement, or I believe it's called a lease. And as a landlord, we have full rights to access with notice. We have all kinds of things that we don't have at our leisure as a city, in addition to code enforcement and the other things that we do have as a regulatory body. So I think that the next year will be fairly quiet. It will eventually start to taper off at the end of that year, and then we can go in and take the building down.
So how will they, I'm sure those buildings are probably connected with the hotel some ways. How are they going to separate that from the hotel?
We actually had a structural engineer come out and do some analysis. They're not connected. They're abutting, but there is a gap between the two buildings. It's a freestanding building with its own concrete footing and foundation structure. There could be some potential impact to the Ben Lomond because the building materials are over the Ben Lomond's building materials, so there might be some weather decay, some water damage that we don't know about until we get into it. So we're working with them. There's also an easement that spans the property line where Ben Lomond is housing their HVAC equipment. We're working with them to make that go away as well, so that come the year, we have a clean demo and everybody is happy.
So if we damage the building, are we responsible for that, or?
Well, the demo contractor would be responsible for damaging Ben Lomond.
Brandon, I've got a question on that 1 year occupancy part of the agreement. Would the REPC as proposed allow for, in the instance that there was a mutual agreement between the two parties, in that 1 year period, if they and we wanted to accelerate that timeline, would this REPC allow for that to happen?
I believe so in the post-closing lease. I can't recall the section that it's in, but I do believe that early termination is a possibility. I'd have to look at it and get back to you affirmatively. But I'm not 100% sure.
Does that scenario seem plausible or possible to you?
Certainly, we would love to accelerate that time frame. Part of the reason why we did this is because we didn't have the full purchase price funding this year. And so it didn't make sense to have the building sit vacant for a year when there could be productive use. A lights on condition sometimes is better than a vacant condition, especially in this situation where some of those folks might come back to the building in its vacant condition. So we felt that because we couldn't pay in full all at once, then having them operate the building as they have always operated it was a better situation. Now, if that changes for them, we'll certainly accept that. I just can't point to that language in the contract. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate glad you've thought about it in that way. I didn't think you had, but it helps to hear it from you. So thanks.
All right, any other questions?
I think this is a great opportunity if we want to create that downtown arts district to tie in with 25th Street and what's happening along that corridor and branches up to Echoes Art Center up there. So it could be a real plus for our downtown district if we looked at something along those lines.
Agree. All right. Is that a motion?
I can make one if you want.
Well, it's time.
I make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2017-7.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Stevens, second by Board Member Nadolski to adopt proposed resolution 2017-7. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member Nadolski?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Garner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer?
Aye.
Chair White?
Aye, that passes. Go forth and do what you do. Next on our agenda is public comments. It's an opportunity to come forward and address the board on any items?
There's no public.
No movement. Comments from the executive director?
Thomas. First, I'd like to say to the board, I really appreciate your support. This has been a huge lift for these guys for a long time, and I'd like to appreciate publicly Tom and Brandon. 5.5 years I've been here, these have been issues they have worked tirelessly on that entire time. The targets moved rapidly. They were always evolving and changing, and you guys have been bulldogs on this, and I can't thank you enough for your work on it. And again, thank you to the board for your support. I think these are going to be big opportunities as we get through it. So we really appreciate your hard work on it.
Thank you. Board members?
I just wanted to say the same thing that the mayor said, but these are incredibly complicated agreements that you've put together. So thank you for your diligence in making sure that we've paid very careful attention to the details. And yeah, I'm really excited about these. So thank you.
We also need to thank Mel, because the very complex deals have to get reviewed by legal, and sometimes we have a headache.
I think we've seen other projects around the city that, like the Swift Company building. I'm sure that was a very complex issue to work through, but you know, we had the junction and we had to work through that, and it has become a very positive and an impactful project for us for the downtown area. And I believe the project over at the Swift building will have the same type of concept for us. And so, but we just have to move forward and keep focused on what we want to do.
Agreed. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Thomas. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Board Member Blair to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? That's a wrap for this, but we're going back to continuation of
Are you hungry?
I am. A continuation of the work session.